Welcome to the Maritime Matters podcast. Did you know that 98% of Australia's trade passes through the maritime domain? 91% of its fuel is imported, and Australia's exclusive economic zone is larger than its mainland. It's easy to see that to Australia, maritime matters. Maritime Matters is the podcast where we break down what the week's events mean for Australia's maritime security and the wider Indo-Pacific.
Welcome to another episode of Maritime Matters for 2026. Now, I know Richard and I have been a little bit slack in recording in 2026, and there has been so much happening, which just proves that maritime matters. But what we're going to share with you today is a special episode. It is a webinar that I recorded on the 14th of April, kindly sponsored by Exail, talking about the importance of mine warfare, obviously with the backdrop of what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz at the moment, but also reflecting on Australia's history in mine clearance operations during the world wars, the threat that mine warfare poses to Australia's maritime trade, and looking at some of the capabilities and evolving technologies in this space. Now, we recorded this episode 2 days before Australia's 2026 National Defence Strategy was released. That does have a little bit on it in mine warfare. Richard and I will be coming back for a normal episode of Maritime Matters in its normal format from Tuesday, the 21st of April. And we'll break down there exactly what the 2026 National Defence Strategy says about maritime. In the meantime, we hope you enjoy this special podcast that focuses on mine warfare. Thanks for listening.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Deanna Knott, Managing Director of Wings Public Relations. I've been working with Exail, formerly Eka Group, since 2021. And welcome to today's short educational webinar, Strait of Hormuz Crisis, Why Australia Urgently Needs Modern Mine Countermeasures. This webinar is perfectly timed because on Thursday, the Australian government is set to release the updated National Defence Strategy and Integrated Investment Project. So that we understand will include the extra $2 to $5 billion for drones and counter-drone systems as part of a $12 to $15 billion decade-long investment in uncrewed and autonomous technologies. So as per my email invitation, a map recently released by Iran's National Security Commission, now widely circulating in international media, marks a large hazardous area restricted for all traffic in the Strait of Hormuz due to naval mines, a clear real-world example of the threat we're discussing today. Today, we'll hear directly from two leading experts on the strategic reality of mine warfare and why autonomous mine countermeasures are now the proven solution used by leading navies. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Jennifer Parker is a former Royal Australian Navy Principal Warfare Officer and Anti-Submarine Warfare Specialist. She served as Director of Operations of Bahrain for the 47-nation Combined Maritime Forces. She's now an independent defence commentator, adjunct professor at the University of Western Australia, and non-resident fellow at the Lowy Institute. And Antony Penn is the MCM Commercial Director at Exail, joining us from France. He's a recognised global expert in autonomous naval operations and modern mine countermeasures with more than 25 years of complex defence industry experience and over 7 years leading Exail's global MCM business development. So Jennifer and Antony, thank you for joining us today. Jen, I might hand over to you first for your overview of mine warfare and any insights you'd like to give us.
Yeah, look, thanks so much, Dee. And I guess, thank you to Wings and Exail for putting on this discussion. And I think a lot of people will be listening to this. Mine warfare is one of the critical issues for Australia's defence that we actually don't talk about. And hopefully the experiences currently in the Strait of Hormuz and the impact that is having on maritime trade will bring this to the forefront. And I think, one of the points I've been trying to make in the last couple of years when we talk about the importance of maritime trade for Australia, and just kind of rehash how important it is. We often say that, like we say we're in the most significant strategic circumstances since World War II. But the detail and the impact often gets lost. At the moment, of course, there is the focus on fuel security. Australia imports 91% of its fuel, but it's not just fuel that we import through the maritime domain. It's actually 99% of our trade, including critical things like pharmaceuticals, the fertiliser to grow our crops. So most people think Australia is a food secure nation because we grow so much food. But in fact, we're not a food secure nation because the inputs to that ecosystem come through the maritime domain. From a national security perspective, the ammunition, the critical resupplies for a lot of our capabilities also come through the maritime domain. So when you think about Australia's defence, the maritime domain is very much our strategic vulnerability. And so we need to think about how do we protect that. And often at the moment in the conversations around the protection of Australia's maritime trade, the focus is always on surface combatants, so frigates and destroyers, and submarines. And that is where a large chunk of the integrated investment program is going to. And those are important elements in protecting Australia's maritime trade. But the thing is, when it comes to protection of maritime trade, it's actually a layered approach. And mine clearance and mine warfare are key elements of that, will be in the future and have been in the past. Now, when we think about the significance of this, it's actually only 38 years ago in the Middle East where a US destroyer was impacted by a mine. So it hit a floating contact mine in the Middle East. Now, when we think about that and what is happening right now in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has declared, as Dee mentioned, that they have deployed mines. Now, they did do this during the tanker wars, and that's where the US had a number of issues with merchant ships and the USS Samuel B. Roberts hitting mines 38 years ago. Now, one of the key things about mines and why it's so important to have such a capable mine clearance capability is you actually don't need to invest a lot in mines to impact another country's maritime trade or their ports or their choke points. Actually, the first thing you just need to do is say that you have mined a strait. Now, if you say that you have mined a strait, that will immediately deter ships from going through until there is a robust mine clearance effort or intelligence produced that demonstrates that it hasn't been mined. And when you think about the Strait of Hormuz, there has been no public confirmation by the US or other partners that Iran has mined the strait. However, the declaration that they have has effectively deterred ships from wanting to go through. And now, to open the Strait of Hormuz, there is a conversation around how do you conduct the mine clearance effort. So it just goes to how powerful mine warfare can be in disrupting trade, let alone if there are actually mines deployed. Now, when it comes to the deployment of mines, they're a very cheap and easy way to have a persistent impact on a port or a key coastal trading route or a choke point. Unlike missiles and drones, you don't need to have a platform there or you don't need to have geographic access. You can send in, as we experienced during World War II, a mini submarine or an uncrewed underwater vehicle or even a fishing vessel and drop mines over the side. And straight away, with a couple of mines in an area, you have created a huge problem in terms of trade, ships wanting to go through, and also in terms of the effort that then needs to be explored to clear that. Now, I don't want to make this sound like a mine warfare 101, and especially anyone listening to this who served in the Navy as a mine warfare expert will want to point out that I'm an anti-submarine warfare expert. But I'm going to give you the cuff rate explanation of mines. So I was actually asked on radio today to talk a little bit about mines because when people think of sea mines, they're not sure what we're necessarily talking about. Are they visible? I mean, if you're driving through a minefield, can't you just see them around you and avoid them? That's not the case. There are a range of different mines. Some mines float on the surface and are contact mines, so if you hit it, it'll explode. But much more complex mines are mines that can be moored on the seabed, but are set to sit in different parts of the sea column. Mines that are not activated by having to collide with it. They can be activated by the sound of your ship or the magnetic signature of your ship. So there are a range of different mines that make it very complicated to understand what may have been deployed when a country says they have mined things and how you might go about detecting them. Now, in terms of trying to conduct mine clearance, it is a really detailed process. Now, when people say, if there are mines in the Strait of Hormuz, how long will it take to clear them? That's an open question. It's not days. It may be weeks. It may be months. But how do you go about it? Well, the first bit is that you need to survey the area and detect mines. And I know that Antony will talk about some of the capabilities that you can use to do that. You have mine clearance ships, also now increasingly uncrewed underwater vehicles, autonomous underwater vehicles being used to do that. But once you've detected what may be a mine, and often in this survey, you have a number of false positives. So you might detect a rock, you might detect an old barrel, an old wreck, etc. You then need to go through the process of investigating that contact and classifying and identifying it. So this takes time. Once you've confirmed that's a mine, you then need to neutralize it. So you need to have the capability to destroy that mine. And normally that's some sort of small explosive charge that is deployed next to the mine. Then you need to go over the area again and confirm you've gotten all the mines. Now, that's a really lengthy process, especially when you're talking about a big body of water. When you think about the Strait of Hormuz, you can see that whether Iran has deployed mines or not, to get shipping confident to go through that strait, they'll need to be convinced that mines aren't there. And so this is going to take a significant mine clearance effort. And so that just really goes to kind of the deterrent impact of mines. The other challenge as well, and you might say, well, why aren't the US currently conducting mine clearance efforts? And I note on Sunday, the US said they sent through two destroyers through the strait as a precursor to mine clearance. Destroyers are not the best at mine clearance. You often say that ships like that can clear a mine once when they hit it and explode, but beyond that, they're not the best. So you do need to have specialized capability for this. But this is not only a far-off issue that occurs across the globe or in the Strait of Hormuz. It's something that is really ever-present for Australia. So during both World War I and World War II, we had mines deployed off our coast. So during World War I, we had mines deployed by German raiders. During World War II, we had an extensive number, so thousands of mines deployed by both the Japanese and the Germans. And in fact, they were deployed significantly down the east coast, but not just the east coast of Australia, also through the Pacific around Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. After World War II was complete, we were still clearing mines. In fact, we had an intensive mine clearance effort around Australia until 1947. And then after 1947, we were still having to clear mines less intensively until the early 50s. And during that mine clearance effort up until about 1947, we actually cleared close to 2,000 mines from Australia. And since then, we've still had mines coming to the surface. So you can see how much of a difficult challenge this would be. And if you think about Australia's vulnerability of maritime trade, we often think about ships interdicting other ships. You often think about missile or drone attacks or submarines. But actually, one of the easiest ways to cripple Australia is to deploy mines, or say you've deployed mines around our key ports of Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne or other key ports, and you will not have ships going in and out until you have managed to clear those mines. And in fact, in that mine clearance effort after World War II, a number of ships still hit mines. And in fact, sadly, in 1947, September 1947, an Australian ship, HMAS Warrnambool, who was clearing mines at the time, hit a mine and 4 personnel were killed. During the conflict as well, a number of coastal trading ships for Australia hit mines. So it had a real impact on Australia in World War II. And when you look forward to any potential conflict in this region for Australia, our critical dependence on maritime trade means that one of the easiest ways to impact Australia's economic capability, but also our ability to continue the fight, is simply to mine Australia's ports, or say you have mined our coastal trading routes or key choke points to our north. And when you think about some of the mining capabilities, so Iran has effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz. It's thought to have anywhere between 1,000, maybe 3,000 mines. When we look at China's mine warfare capability, we often focus on the size of China's surface combatant fleet or its growing submarine capability, all of which are critical. China is estimated to have over 50,000 to 100,000 mines. And to be honest, we really don't know how many because it's so easy to disguise how many mines you have produced. But you can expect, in the event of a conflict in the Indo-Pacific where Australia is involved, we will have mines deployed around Australia and need to be able to quickly clear them. And this probably takes me to my final point, which is Australia's current capability to do this. I mentioned before that we are so focused on surface combatants and submarines, and rightfully so. We have underdone investment in our auxiliary capabilities, our hydrographic capabilities, our ability to survey the seabed, our replenishment capabilities, and our mine warfare capabilities. So in terms of Australia's mine warfare capabilities, look, it's not actually clear in the public domain how much capability we have. Certainly, there's a recent article in Naval News that says that the Royal Australian Navy is confident that we have the minimum viable capability to clear mines. I've got to say, I haven't spoken to any mine warfare experts that are confident on that point. Australia used to operate 8 mine clearance vessels, but they were all commissioned in the 90s, early 2000s. Now we have 2 left. And given their age, so over 20 years old, you'd have to question what is the operational availability of those ships. They've had upgraded capabilities, so modern AUVs put on them, for example, but the ships themselves are significantly aged. They were meant to be replaced, and this was a key focus of the Force Structure Plan in 2020. But in 2024, that plan fell apart, and the project to replace our mine clearance vessels, C1905, was cancelled in the Integrated Investment Program. Now, why was it cancelled? The government has said that we have other solutions to this that are autonomous. Realistically, what it looks like is the defence budget was so tight, this was considered a lower priority or a low-hanging fruit. But all mine warfare experts that I've spoken to in Australia would say that this is a decision that leaves us significantly exposed. In the event of a conflict in this region, based on historical precedents and based on what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz right now, Australia can expect to have mines deployed around our key ports and around our coastal trading routes. You can also expect mines in some of the key choke points around the region and around the Pacific, where Australia will be expected to support an effort to clear them. So not only do we need to be able to clear our ports and our coastal trading routes, we need the ability to deploy mine clearance capabilities forward. And so this becomes one of the critical conversations around the defence of Australia and our maritime trade. And it's a key gap that is underinvested in. So look, I will wrap it up there, but hopefully what I've covered there is how important mine warfare is, despite the fact that we don't seem to talk about it a lot in Australia. We have an obsession with submarines. They are important, but mine warfare is equally important. The good thing is the solutions to address mine warfare are much cheaper than nuclear-powered submarines or new frigates. The bad thing is that mine warfare can impact Australia so critically and so easily, and right now it doesn't look like we have a lot of capabilities in our order of battle to be able to detect and clear those mines. So look, I'll wrap it up there, but happy to take questions later on in the discussion.
Thank you, Jen. That was fantastic. A very insightful overview, and very interesting, of course, with the cancellation of C1905 that our client Exail was actually shortlisted for. Now I'd like to hand over to Antony, who will talk about mine countermeasure solutions that are now available to navies around the world.
Yeah, thank you, Dee. And thank you very much, Jennifer. I could listen to you all day. I thought that was really interesting and a great insight into the current situation, and as well, giving a lot more context in the past of how effective, mines can be at crippling countries, or in any case, doing great danger and causing problems for in wartime situations. So yes, I think the current situation with Hormuz has brought into the spotlight mine warfare and the ease of having an effective strategy to neutralize the enemy by simply saying that there's mines. And as you mentioned, we don't know whether there are or not. We suspect there are, but I think everyone today pretty much in the world has been actually impacted just by this simple announcement, and that's incredible. That's incredible, and I think it really does highlight the importance of mine warfare, and then therefore the importance of having the capabilities to manage that threat in order to give confidence back to countries and to everything that needs to function around the sea lanes in order to get a country running, back to normal. So what we can say is that the traditional way of doing it was often quite slow, and so as we saw after the different world wars, many countries are actually still cleaning those remaining explosives and things like that. So it is a very, very long task, but traditionally it was people on an adapted mothership doing it. So it was quite slow, quite sequential, and obviously high risk, because you've got 50, 60 naval people on board that ship who are actually in the minefield whilst they're conducting these operations. Fortunately today, with the technology, we can do things differently, and that's what I think many countries have decided. So the transition is coming. Not everyone has actually taken the corner yet, but with the Hormuz situation, what we did see was the fact that people have struggled to accelerate their programs in order to have continuity in their capabilities. So we have obsolescence problems in many navies. It's not just Australia, it's many navies, because we talk with them all around the world who are struggling at the moment to maintain any kind of mine warfare capability. And we know that generally in the budgetary trade-offs, and everyone has these kind of situations, often other programs will be chosen ahead of mine warfare because they're considered more important, and obviously, as we can see, deterrence is often considered a stronger position to have in that budget than for more of a defensive and a securing mine warfare program. So today's solutions are drone-based. So there's a lot of technology here now, and allowing us to send in basically robots to do the job. The crew will remain outside of the threat area, so they can be at shore, or they can be in a mothership that is well outside of that mine threat area. And it's operated through a certain number of different uncrewed vessels or vehicles. Firstly, by an uncrewed surface vessel, which will actually carry in and out of the threat area the different vehicles that will conduct the mission. The way of clearing mines hasn't changed. It's still through the traditional phases of, first of all, we have to do the detection phase. So this can be done by basically an unmanned vehicle with sonar, very high resolution now. And because he's swimming closer to the seabed, he's getting excellent sonar imagery, probably about 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters, allowing the operator to do that classification much more easily than before. The technology is really helping the operators now to be making better decisions and to be more effective. It's not to replace them. I think the transition has to as well incorporate the fact that the crews have future, they have usage in the mine warfare domain, and the fact that they can use the intelligence available now and the technology available now to work more efficiently and more precisely is a huge gain. Once things have detected and classified, we then generally go in for an inspection phase. So that the identification is generally done through high definition cameras. So these, once again, are launched from that surface platform, and they're given real-time images to the operator to actually confirm whether it's a threat or not. And if it's a threat confirmed, he can then go in and neutralize with a third vehicle. So this process, although it seems more complicated because it's many vehicles, the great advantage is that many things can be done simultaneously. So planning is key. But when we're in a strait of water, for example, that does need clearing, we can do that planning rather efficiently. And what that enables us to do is parallel tasking, whereby we will have many drones operating at the same time, and we can conduct all of the different phases of the mission simultaneously as well. So not only is it much safer, it's as well much faster. So if we come back to the situation in Australia, the challenge in Australia is its geography. Because it's an island, even though, you know, a very big island and trade reliant, the fact of the size of the country to get to all of the different strategic areas that would need protecting, the fact that it's got such a vast coastline, mine warfare is complicated. How do you look at that? And now with the development of those high value assets that Australia is buying and developing, I think mine warfare definitely is a key part to that development of the Australian defence capability. And I'm hoping that, you know, in the budgets this is seen. I mean, everyone knows it's not something that's not known. We're informing no one about any, you know, change of the way things are done. This has existed since the First World War. It's just about getting the budget to those priorities when it's deterrence, defense. You know, I know there's always a trade-off. However, what standoff systems provide now is a cost-effective way of doing it, because they're deployable, because they can do simultaneous operations for a much lower budget. They can obviously conduct those missions basically anywhere in Australia rapidly, whereas before you'd need to take the ship, you'd need to take all of the crew. It was extremely complicated to conduct those missions and secure a coastline as vast as Australia. So I think, you know, the future will definitely be with these unmanned, uncrewed systems, and the fact that they can be either operated from shore is something that will be key in optimizing the cost effectiveness of that solution. Now, the uncrewed systems are developed. They will continue to evolve over the years. We see how artificial intelligence is helping us to do that classification phase, plan the missions, make everything as easy as possible for the operator. But at the same time, the software to integrate everything is key as well. And I think in the development of that capability, there has to as well be major consideration for the sovereign approach of how we do it. And I would say that this is one thing that's important in the way that we do here business here in Exail, is that, you know, we're not big enough to do everything ourselves. So we do have to, even though we've got the technology and the capabilities to produce, we will look at developing and giving that sovereign capability to the countries so that they can grow with. Australia used the term evergreening, which is a fantastic way of explaining the way that software needs to grow and develop and evolve according to the future threats or the future situations in which a country will find itself. And this is really key to our strategy as well in developing and getting those unmanned systems out. And I think the last thing we would say is that due to the Hormuz situation, no one is actually ready. As we said earlier, you know, all of the major nations that we would turn to are now shying away because they don't have confidence in their system. That global integration of their system is not there. And so they're not confident of going into these dangerous areas and actually doing the job properly. I think within the countries that do have these unmanned systems that took the dive early on and have already started to be delivered and have got the complete solution available, I think we will see them come to the forefront now and actually lead the way in how to do things. I'm very interested to see how the new announcements within Australia come out in terms of budgetary direction, to see if the mine warfare, the poor person of the budgetary stories every time will have been considered a bit more. So I think that wraps it up for me. It's probably trying to give a bit more of an industrial point of view to this discussion. And again, happy to take any questions or discuss further with you, Jennifer.
One question I do have for you though, Anthony, you just mentioned about those navies who have, I guess, come on the journey early. And I think, of course, of the Dutch and Belgian navies. Maybe you might be able to mention what you've done for them and what you're doing for them from an Exail perspective, because they are now the NATO leaders in mine countermeasures.
Yeah, well, the Belgian Navy already were the NATO leaders for mine warfare with the Centre of Excellence that's in Ostend, and they are obviously our reference customers because they were the first nation to actually go all in. And when I say all in, not only was it a complete drone system for mine warfare, but as well they integrated it into a dedicated mothership. So it was a major program. You know, they ordered 12 ships. We have a purpose-built factory to actually provide that customer with those drone systems, so we can actually produce systems at speed and, you know, off the shelf now. Those systems at speed and for that program. Every navy has a slightly different approach. Because that's using a dedicated mothership, but these systems can be used from shore. They can be used from existing vessels as well. They can be used from a craft of opportunity. We've given second life as well to certain conventional mine hunters by installing drone systems on board. You know, I think the flexibility of this third generation of mine hunting capability is a real opportunity for navies to actually, you know, look at how they want to do things, and the system can pretty much be adapted to anything really.
I'm very conscious of the time now, and I think that we've covered all the questions that came in online as well, which is very handy. Probably just want to land on one final question before we finish up. And I guess both of you can answer this, Anthony and Jen, but maybe you, Jen, in the first instance. Can you ever truly declare an area mine-free, as somebody has asked me to ask you? And is mine clearance always about managing risk rather than eliminating it?
Yeah, look, thanks so much. I think that's a really important question. This is not a set and forget conversation. Once there has been a view that mines have been deployed somewhere, you really can develop confidence levels in the safety of transiting through. But in my personal view, you can't ever say that you have cleared the whole area and there could not possibly be a mine there. So really you do in mine warfare focus on confidence levels. This also goes to the point of this being, even in peacetime, a continual process. It's something in terms of focusing on making sure your key points, this become a key focus, I think, when Australia is operating nuclear powered submarines, for example, that you need to be regularly clearing those ports to make sure that mines have not been deployed in those areas. So I guess in terms of, can you ever say something is clear? No, not definitively, in my view. You can develop high degrees of confidence based on how many times you have cleared that area, and based on the capabilities you've used. And, you know, we know that post-World War II, and this has been a major issue in the Pacific, mines continue to turn up and be detected. So I guess it's more about confidence levels and managing risk than saying that is completely eliminated as a threat.
Completely agree with that, and what I'd add is that just to be clear, is the fact that mines can be buried, and it's those ones that are very difficult to detect even nowadays with, you know, we're using sonar technology and sub-bottom profilers, that kind of thing, which is improving our capability of detecting them, but that the confidence is average. So, you know, we're still working on that, and the residual risk, it has to be managed in order to, you know, decide whether you do or not navigate in that area. And then obviously the mines that are floating, well, they're moving. And so they're the other reason that it's quite difficult to say permanently that it's a secured area. So yeah, it does need persistence in that detection phase to be sure that the waters are safe.
Well, thank you very much for today's webinar and the very interesting discussion. I've learnt even more. I've trying after 5 years of being involved in mine warfare on the outskirts to learn more and more. And I think this has really assisted me, and I'm sure the audience at large. Should anybody who's watching this webinar with us need further information, they can always write to me, deanna@wingspr.com.au, and I will liaise, of course, with Jennifer and Antony. Antony, Jennifer, thank you so much. We really appreciate you spending so much time with us today. And I think on that note, we'll conclude the webinar.